Arizona Senator John McCain. Senator, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
I'm great. Let's talk foreign policy right away with what's going on with North Korea. What's your analysis of that situation?
I think it's very serious. I think that the North Koreans are unpredictable at best. Their motives are hard to define. They're still probably the most oppressive and repressive regime on earth, and they continue to test missiles and detonate nuclear weapons, and they will sooner or later match those up and pose a threat to the United States of America. Obviously, the Bush administration's efforts have failed, and the Obama administration is having the same kind of frustration. But the people that control and have the influence over North Korea are the Chinese, and the Chinese hold the key to putting sufficient pressure on the North Koreans to bring about some resolution to this threat that we face.
Is there an effective way for us to put pressure on China so they'll put pressure on North Korea?
Well, rather than so much pressure from the United States, it's in China's interest not to see this kind of confrontation in Asia. Now, the Chinese have mixed emotions about it because they don't want this kind of turmoil in Asia that can ensue, but at the same time, they don't want the North Korean government to collapse because they'd be faced with millions of refugees, nor do they want to see a united Korea. I think that we have to appeal to China's interests rather than ask them to show some kind of charity towards us, because that kind of turmoil in Asia would interfere with China's development and cause them all kinds of problems as well.
Senator, your foreign policy expertise has been acknowledged for a couple of decades. What insight can you give us on North Korea? Is it as unstable as it's portrayed?
We don't know. We probably know least about North Korea than any other country because of the total insularity of the regime. We know they have a couple 100,000 people in a gulag that would make Stalin blush. The average North Korean is 3 to 4 inches shorter than the average South Korean because of the terrible nutrition situation there. Kim Jong-il is a mercurial individual. There are significant questions about his health. I think it's pretty well accepted that he had a severe stroke about a year ago or so. The pictures show him in poor health, and the succession issue is always very complicated in one of these countries. So I don't think we know exactly what North Korea's behavior will be, but it's very clear they crave the spotlight. They crave a position of influence in the world, and their animosity towards South Korea and the United States is certainly intense. So it's the unpredictability of the behavior of North Korea that probably concerns us as much as anything else.
And Senator, for good reason, when most of us hear nuclear missiles, we get a little nervous. How would you gauge, not necessarily nervous to describe you, but which would make you more nervous, North Korea with nukes or Iran with nukes?
It's a tough call, but I would say probably, if I had to judge, both are very serious threats, but if I had to, I would say Iran because of the instability in the region. The Pacific region and that part of Asia is pretty stable as for China, Japan, South Korea, etc. In the Iranian part of the world, there's instability everywhere, and I think most of us agree that it is very likely that the Israelis could make a decision at some point to initiate military action to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, and that could cause tremendous turmoil in the region, by the way, where our oil supplies come from, or at least a lot of them.
That's Senator John McCain of Arizona. I'm Steve Goldstein. It's Here and Now on KJZZ. There is room for your phone calls at 480-774-8200. That's 480-774-8200. Also, questions and comments welcome online for Senator John McCain at kjzz.org. Senator, is it fair yet to give President Obama some sort of letter grade on the job he's doing?
I think it's too early. I think on national security issues, I've been able to work with him on Iraq, Afghanistan, the strategies in both places. He just signed a bill that I worked hard with him and the Democrats with to try to reform and address this issue of how to control cost overruns and acquisition of weapons systems. On the domestic side, I think that he is committing generational theft. I think we're mortgaging our children's futures, and this kind of spending that we're on and ownership of the private enterprise system, banks, financial institutions, now Chrysler and General Motors, I think is very, very harmful to America's physical future.
And the phrase we've heard a lot is allowing certain businesses or companies to fail. Would that have been a good idea, you think, in some of these cases?
I am absolutely certain that if Chrysler and General Motors had gone into pre-structured bankruptcy, we would not have spent tens of billions of dollars of the taxpayers' dollar and end up in the same place. It's been profligate. And when I'm in Tucson yesterday and see a small business owner who's having to close his or her business, and they look at me and say, why am I too small to save? Whereas the GM and Chrysler are too big to fail. I don't have a good answer for that, particularly when small businesses are the generator of jobs in America.
Senator, are we in a position where the economy was so terrible, whether we blame that on the housing industry or anything else, that a lot of people are advocates of doing something that you might consider extreme, but maybe we were forced into that situation, and you think if we were doing a little better, this would not have been permitted?
I think we had to have a stimulus package. We Republicans, it was my bill, proposed a $400 billion package that really wasn't shovel-ready and that really, I think, could have had a stimulative effect on the economy without doing the damage to the future of the economy that the administration's plan is. And by the way, I want to acknowledge elections have consequences. So that's what happens when parties are in power and some are not. But so I believe that there was a stimulus required. I also believe that when the kind of behavior that was exhibited by some of the financial institutions, it's ironic that many of those who are responsible for this worst recession in our lifetimes are also the ones who are being rewarded with taxpayers' dollars. It's not fair.
Senator, what about the makeup of the president's economic team in general, whether it's Secretary Geithner or Undersecretary Summers? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Geithner is doing better. I do believe the economy is showing signs of recovery, although that's a hard thing to sell in some parts of the state. But in the case of Summers, he is a brilliant man. He is of incredible credentials, but he's also a very liberal economist. I am not a liberal economist, and so I strongly disagree with many of the policies that they have put into place. This movement into the private sector on the part of the federal government is something that I am philosophically and fundamentally opposed to, and I think is very bad for the country.
Phone lines are open for Senator John McCain on KJZZ's Here and Now. The number 480-774-8200. That's 480-774-8200. Senator, let's return to foreign policy a bit. Obviously, a lot of controversy about what to do about Guantanamo Bay. In part, where to move suspected terrorists. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I also favored the closing of Guantanamo Bay. The mistake that the administration has made here is that they announced with great fanfare that they would close Guantanamo Bay, but had no plan or policy for the tough parts of that issue, which are the way you take care of the issues concerning those who are, quote, enemy combatants, ones you can't try but you know you can't release. By the way, more than 10%, possibly as high as 20% of those who we've released from detention have gone back into the fight, two of whom are major figures, one Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and one in Pakistan. So, and how you handle the issue of the military commissions, how you take care or address the issue of people like the Uyghurs who cannot return to China because they will be tortured or killed by the Chinese government. So none of the hard part was addressed, only the easy part. And so now they find themselves wrapped up in a very, very difficult situation. So I would have closed Guantanamo Bay, but not until I had developed an overall policy and plan for the tough issues surrounding the detainees.
Senator, at what point do you think we can find a plan for detainees that enough people can agree on? It seems like an immensely complicated issue. No one wants, obviously, these suspected terrorists in their own backyard.
Well, it's very obvious that military commissions will be part of the solution. The military commissions were not only condemned but derided by then-candidate Obama, but I'm glad that he has changed his position on that. We still, there's a subset of issues such as admissibility of evidence, the right of a defendant to see the information that may be classified, that is part of the case against the detainee. There's all kinds of aspects of this issue that are going to have to be resolved, and I will stand ready to work with them to try to develop a policy, because right now we're in the worst of all worlds.
Still to come on Here and Now, a few more minutes with Senator John McCain, plus your phone calls at 480-774-8200. And Democrats may soon have a 60-seat threshold in the U.S. Senate. We'll talk about the political ramifications of such a majority and why Senator McCain may become even more important to Republicans when Here and Now continues. It's Here and Now on KJZZ. I'm Steve Goldstein in Phoenix. Arizona Senator John McCain, our guest this hour. The Minnesota Supreme Court will hear oral arguments next week in a case that has national implications. The justices are being asked to overturn an appeals court decision that gave Democrat Al Franken a 312-vote victory over incumbent Republican Senator Norm Coleman. If Franken prevails, it gives Democrats a 60-seat majority in the U.S. Senate. Senator McCain, how significant is that for Democrats to have 60 or for either side to have 60-40?
I think it's significant, but I would not overstate it in that there are a number of Democrat senators who are from Republican states or more conservative states, and they will be hard-pressed to vote for a left agenda, a more liberal agenda, and that would be in cases like health care reform and some of the others. So you give the Democrats credit for major victories in both 2006 and 2008, but I'm not sure that means they have automatically 60 votes on every issue. In fact, I'm sure they do not.
Well, many of us in the media made a big deal about Arlen Specter, Pennsylvania senator, switching parties. Was that a surprise to you at all? Or is he someone who sort of floated back and forth a little bit?
I think the kindest description is floated back and forth a little bit. David Broder is one of the most respected columnists, as you know, Steve, in America, viewed in many ways as a dean of journalists and is a very centrist for the Washington Post, wrote a column entitled Specter the Defector and pointed out that Senator Specter had started out his political career as a Democrat. So I think that Senator Specter believed that he could not be reelected to the United States Senate from Pennsylvania as a Republican, and I think that's the beginning and the end of the explanation.
Senator, we have plenty of phone calls for you at 480-774-8200. Our first one is from Mac in Mesa. Mac, thanks for calling Here and Now. You're on with the Senator.
Hey, Mac.
Mac, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to challenge the good senator on his recent comments on Iran on the show just now. I'm wondering what information does he have that the IAEA does not have? They've clearly said there's no military program there. And after the debacle in Iraq, I marvel that here we are going down that same path. I want to hear your comments, Senator.
All right, Mac, thanks for the call.
Mac, you are reading different IAEA reports than I am. The IAEA assessment is that the Iranians continue to violate UN Security Council resolutions, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and are well on the path to development of nuclear weapons. If you have different information than that, please get it to me. I'd be more than glad to examine it. I do have some confidence in the Israeli intelligence estimates and the public statements by the leaders of both parties that the Iranian government is developing a nuclear weapon, and the president Ahmadinejad has made many public statements that they want to, quote, wipe Israel off the map. To me, that's a very serious threat. Do you have a response to that, Mac?
Absolutely. First, you're not answering the question. I'm talking about the specific finding from the International Atomic Agency saying
right. That Iran is developing nuclear weapons. Yes.
So how about this? Post that report to your website. Let the public see.
It's been posted by the IAEA on numerous occasions. And if you don't believe the Israelis, and if you don't believe our intelligence services, that's fine. I respect that view. But I tend to go with their conclusions because they have the capability to arrive at them.
All right, Mac, thanks for the phone call. Senator, we haven't talked about Afghanistan yet.
Yep.
A lot more emphasis being put there, including a new commander, General McChrystal. Mm-hmm. New York Times brought up the story again that he has been cleared, but he had been involved in the suspected cover-up of Pat Tillman's death. Should we have any concerns about General McChrystal?
General McChrystal was nominated and confirmed by the Senate since the tragic Tillman affair. I did correspond with and spoke to Mrs. Tillman and told her I would be, since I'm a member of the Armed Services Committee, through which his nomination will go, that I would be more than happy to ask any questions that she might want to pose to him that needed to be answered. Understandably, the Tillman family is very disturbed. I guess it's the best description I can use about the circumstances concerning the portrayal of Pat Tillman's sacrifice, and I would stand ready to try to make any questions, pose any questions that need to be answered by the Tillman family. It's still a blot on the honorable record of the United States Army and should never ever be repeated. But as far as I can tell, General McChrystal, although having some involvement in it, did not have direct involvement that would be disqualifying him for promotion.
Okay. Senator John McCain with us on KJZZ's Here and Now for a few more minutes. I'm Steve Goldstein. More phone calls. We go to Tyler in Phoenix. Tyler, thanks for calling. You're on with Senator John McCain.
Hi, Tyler.
Hi, Senator. I think most people know you as a man of integrity and are willing to call out either sides, either the Democrats or the Republicans, for shenanigans. I'm wondering how you view the internal philosophical strife that seems to be going on between the different factions of the Republican Party, whether they be the extreme, Rush Limbaugh or the Colin Powells. Where do you see the future of the party going in this debate?
Well, Tyler, I thank you for bringing that up, and I'll try to be brief in my answer. But when parties lose elections, as we had the last two, and I saw this in 1982 and 1992 and other times, it's time for great debate and discussion within the party to find out what our failings were, what we need to do to engage the electorate and our citizens to get the support of a majority of them. That's what parties are supposed to be all about, to win elections, and what we need to do to communicate with all parts of our population, including Hispanics, including African American, including Irish Americans, etc. Communicating better with young Americans. In other words, let's have the debate, let's have the discussion, and as long as somebody adheres to the principles of the party of Abraham Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt and Ronald Reagan, fine, get into the debate and let's reach some consensus, and that's what we have to do as a Republican Party if we're going to regain the majority. And by the way, we can and will. I believe America is a right-of-center nation, and the Republican Party is a right-of-center party.
Senator, some of us have some would call it the Pollyanna viewpoint that bipartisanship is this wonderful thing. What's the state of bipartisanship in Washington right now?
Well, I'd like to tell you that there's a lot of it. There's some of it, but that if you really want bipartisanship, you have to sit down and negotiate. I appreciate the fact that the president came over and spoke to the Republicans in the Senate. I appreciate going down to the White House and being talked to by the president. But if you want bipartisanship, you got to be in on the takeoff as well as the landing, and you got to sit down and negotiate with a common purpose and come up with a solution that involves concessions. That's what it's all about. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill kept Social Security alive for a long period of time because they sat down and negotiated and came out with a bipartisan solution. This administration is not engaging in genuine negotiations, and I'm sorry to report that.
So, Senator, should those of us in Washington just expect bipartisanship when not one party controls the White House and both bodies of Congress?
Well, the results of the last election are that they can govern without negotiations and without bipartisanship. They did that on the stimulus package. They did it on the budget. They've done it on a number of other issues, S-chip. But and they can do that. That's their right as a result of elections. But don't call it bipartisanship. Don't say that you have negotiated with the other side. Tell the truth. You have exercised the majority the Democrats have and the administration have, and they've achieved their goals, but not through bipartisanship.
Senator, we're going to get a couple of more phone calls in for you. Bob from Phoenix is here. Bob, thanks for calling Here and Now.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
Bob, could I just mention one thing real quick before you ask your question? There has been some areas that I've worked with the president on, whether it be Afghanistan, Iraq, procurement reform, and others. So it's not a total lack of bipartisanship there. Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, good morning, Senator. My name is Bob. I'm retired Navy Master Chief. I've got a couple of concerns. One is the fact that I think that our country is using the reserves way too much. I don't think they were designed to go on active duty for 2 or 3 years at a time. And I think the regular forces should be brought up to where they can take care of things. Also, apparently the reserves are not getting first-class equipment. They're getting worn out and used-up equipment from the active duty people.
Okay, Bob, thanks for the call. Senator?
Thank you, Bob, and thanks for serving. And everything I ever learned about leadership, I learned from a Navy Chief Petty Officer. The reserves have done a magnificent job, and you're right, they've been overstressed in a way that is almost unconscionable, including the Guard. They have done a magnificent job. They are well-equipped. The recruiting and retention in the Army and Marine Corps and Navy and Air Force is now incredibly high, and a lot of that, let's be frank, has to do with the state of the economy, but it also has to do with the fact that the men and women who are serving are the very best of America. We have reduced a lot of the reserve requirements as we increase the size of the Army and Marine Corps, but the strain on the military is still there. We are going to be in Afghanistan for a long time. We will be in Iraq in one form or another for a long time as well, which means we need a permanent, larger Army and Marine Corps in order to cope with the challenges of the enemy we face.
And our final phone call for John McCain from Doug in Phoenix. Doug, you're on with Senator McCain on Here and Now.
Hey, Doug.
Yeah.
Doug, you're on the air with the Senator. Go ahead.
Okay.
Ask your question, Doug, please.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Right now.
Hello.
Doug.
Yeah, this is Doug.
Yes, Doug.
Senator McCain, just a quick, more of an observation, and then maybe just your comment. You know, I know that the Obama administration, in terms of talking to the car makers, in terms of giving them money and giving them a lot of conditions on that money, wanting them to do certain things, etc., holding them accountable. But my real question is why wasn't that same kind of litmus test also exercised when we gave the bankers and like AIG some of this money? I'm just curious. I know I've heard some talk in Congress about the fact that it didn't seem like we were holding them to any kind of a real high standard.
Okay, Doug, thanks.
Well, Doug, first of all, I'm not sure we should have bailed out AIG, but having said that, what we've done in the case of the automobile manufacturers is that we have, instead of letting them go into pre-structured bankruptcy and come out rather quickly, we have now injected tens of billions of dollars and ended up in the same place where we would have been if they'd have gone into bankruptcy to start with, only now the unions, the auto workers unions, and the federal government own the automotive industry. That has never succeeded in hitting market, particularly here in the state of Arizona. And I worry about the small business people who are too small to save, as opposed to these major financial institutions who are too big to fail. I don't get it, and I don't like it, and neither do most of the citizens of Arizona.
And Senator, before we let you go,
Yes.
I wanted to get your reaction, since you were part of the so-called Gang of 14. I'm not sure if you like that name or not. What's your reaction to President Obama's nomination of Sonia Sotomayor to the Supreme Court?
Well, I think that we ought to examine it and give, and obviously have the hearings and discussions. And I would point out there was long delays in both Alito and Roberts, 70-some days and 90-some days, and before they were confirmed by the Senate. So full and complete hearings will give the nominee a chance to make her case. It is a landmark decision from the standpoint that we're all proud of a Hispanic woman being a member of the United States Supreme Court. By the way, we're also proud of Sandra Day O'Connor, but that so we'll see. You may recall that then Senator Obama, President Obama, did try to filibuster Judge Alito. So I don't think he should be too vociferous if someone says that they should filibuster. I see no reason to filibuster at this time. Let's go ahead and have the hearings and then see what our judgments are at the time in light of the testimony of the nominee. But right now, the filibuster is not on the table. There's plenty of time to consider that if it's necessary. I hope it's not.
Senator John McCain, thanks very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.